Hi, my name is Art, and today we're going to be building a Slack bot that is able to reference documentation directly in Slack. So we're going to be supplying it with a bunch of documents, for example, HR policies, and we would allow our users in Slack to directly answer questions about those policies. We're going to be using N8N, we're going to be using Supabase for Postgres, and a few other tools. Let's dive in. It is a super powerful tool, fairly technical still, but you're going to be able to master it fairly quickly. So in order to get started, sign up here, and we're going to be using the cloud version, but you can also use this locally. Once you're logged in, you're going to see the screen, and you would need to go and create a new workflow. And it's empty canvas right now. We're going to start with implementing Slack directly, and then we're going to be layering on top the AI agent, and then we're going to be able to connect this agent to the docs in Google Drive. Let's click here on starting and add a Slack trigger. So in Slack, we're going to be selecting, there's a lot of different actions here. So we're going to be picking a new message posted in the channel. And we're going to go through the configuration for Slack. So with Slack, I'm assuming you have an access to Slack already, and you have admin access to Slack. To get started with a new app, you need to go to api.slack.com/apps, click create new app. Then from scratch, give the bot the name. It's going to be DocBot, and select the workspace. When the app is created, you're going to be navigated to the basic information page here. Already uploaded a logo for our bot, and we're going to go to the auth and permission section, and we're going to configure all of the permissions needed for the bot. So in the bot token scope section, you're going to add several permissions. Let's start with app mention and read. That's going to allow the bot to read messages. Then we're going to allow to look into the history of the channels. Then we're going to allow to read the channels, write to channels when the bot is activated. We're going to get access to some of the prior groups when the bot is already added to. And we're also going to get incoming webhook and maybe some additional user information. Let's say that's going to be read. Okay, I think we're good. And up here in the top, let's go and install this in our workspace. That's going to trigger this installation process. We're going to pick a channel we're going to be using for testing. We'll click allow. And the bot should be installed. So here's the super secret bot user auth token, which I'm going to be disabling obviously after this video, but this is something we're going to need later on. But maybe let's go also and configure a few more things before we get back to N8N. So we also need to add more event subscriptions here. And for event subscriptions, that's something that's going to allow our bot to listen to different events and get triggered. So we're going to add a few more events here. So that will be started from messages. Message.groups. And we also got to get message channels. Okay, and then what are we going to need to do? Also get the requested URL here from N8N. Let's go back to N8N and continue configuring our workflow. So we already have our node added here. So we're going to go and create a new credential. So with new credential, what we need to do is to grab that newly created auth bot token, and we're going to copy it here and bring it back to N8N. Click save. Great, so this is all successful right now, and we're going to be proceeding with the next steps. So we're going to be triggering on new messages posted to the channel, and we're going to pick a channel here from the list. We're going to be N8N and select test. Okay, great. So that's supposed to work. And then at the end, we're not going to do anything magical, but we're going to add another Slack node that will send a message back to the channel or a thread, for example, and will help us to test this integration. So I'm going to search for send message. And I'm going to get this node together. So we have our Slack account connected. So it's going to be operation send. We're going to send it to the channel, and we're going to pick the channel here. So N8N Slack test, and it's going to be hello message just for test. So let's go back. One thing too we forgot probably to look into is that for Slack triggers, we have test and production URLs. Unfortunately, you cannot enable them both for some limitations from Slack. So we're going to be using test in one, and we need to go back to Slack, and we need to set up this request URL here, which will be essentially the webhook. Unfortunately, some of the bot events got removed here, so we need to type them again. Okay, so we see that the URL did not respond, so that means that we need to start and test at least one of the executions here in order to see some results. So let's go probably back and let's hit execute workflow and see what happens. So it's happening in the background, the webhook becomes live and then the Slack trigger becomes active. So we would go to our Slack application, to our newly created Slack test channel, and let's test it out. So the first thing we need to mention DocBot just to make sure it's in a channel. Let's add them to the channel. Great, so the DocBot is here, and then let's send a test message. Going back to init, we're still waiting on the trigger. But this is fine because one of the things we need to configure still is the webhook. So let's go back to the configuration header tray. Okay, that's all verified right now. We're going to save these changes and we're going to go back to init and test it again. So let's stop listening here. Let's go back and let's execute the workflow again. So it's listening for new events. We go back and we type test. And we see the DocBot send us hello, which means that it works. Awesome. Okay, the next step would be for us to add some AI capabilities, which is the most exciting thing. So we're going to have still the same Slack trigger, and we're going to have a send message at the end, and we're going to insert an AI agent node. AI agent is essentially an LLM processing tool that connects LLMs, but also is able to use different tools to process that information and send it back to Slack. So we're going to start with a chat model. I will be using OpenAI today, but you can use any type of model that you like. So we're going to have this node here connected. As you can see, the credentials are not set. So for credentials, what we would need to do, and we need to set up OpenAI credentials, we would need an API key. So for an API key, we're going to go to platform.openai.com. And in there, we're going to go to dashboard, and we're going to go to API keys, and we're going to create a new API key. So new API key. So we're going to take this key, bring it back to init, and let's save that. Looks like the connection is successful, which is great. And what else do we need to do? So we also can add memory. Memory will help us to the AI agent to remember what's been said before by this user. We're not going to play with that right now, but we can add this at the end. And then the last thing is the tool. And this is where the magic of the reference is going to come through. What we're going to be working with today is connecting to a question and answering tool. Let's look for this tool here. It's a vector store question answer tool, which will allow this AI agent to connect to a vector store and pull data from the database, which is great. So we don't know what it is yet, but let's just give it here. So one of the few parameters here to add would be the vector store. So for the vector store, we're going to be using a tool called Supabase, which is the tool that provides Postgres database hosting for free for limited usage. And we're also going to add the model here. So, and this is actually not helpful. We're going to connect both of those together. And for embeddings here, for Supabase vector store, we need to pick up the embedding model. Embedding model essentially is a model that takes natural language and transform this into a vector. So we're going to be using OpenAI embeddings here. Account already connected, so we're going to be using the small embedding. So all of that seems to be looking okay, and we're going to go probably and trying to figure out how to create these embeddings. All right, for embeddings, what we need to do, and we're going to be using Supabase. So Supabase is an awesome tool. It's open source, but also you can use the hosted version that will allow us to create a Postgres database and store embeddings there. For Supabase, you can go to supabase.com and sign up. And once you sign up, you'll see something like this. We're going to be creating a new project here, and we're going to call this project DocBot. We're going to create a password. I just stored some password here, but make sure you store this password somewhere securely that you can use later on. Let's hit create new project. And with new project, what we're going to be looking into, there's a couple of things that are interesting for us. One is the URL here for a project, and another one is service role. For service role and those two, we need to go and plug them into our NNN. So for NNN, let's add a Supabase. Let's see what the interesting is here. Okay, let's probably use this vector store. And we're going to be adding documents to vector store. So for credentials, here, let's go and add those two parameters back into NNN. So we're going to copy the project URL. And, oh, that's actually refreshed. So let's go back, find this in the project settings. So we're going to look into the API keys, I believe. Okay, great. So reveal that, copy, going back to service role secret. Saving this in NNN. Awesome, so that all works. So what this component would do, and it will allow us to create and insert embeddings. So if you look into the table name here, it's empty. And the reason for that is our database in Supabase is empty. So in order to populate it with the structure that we need in data table, we're going to go to documentation here for Supabase vector store. And they provide an awesome quick start guide for setting up the vector store. We're going to find the SQL query. That's the only thing we need. Let's copy that. And let's go back to our project here and that we created in Supabase. We're going to go to SQL editor. We're going to click on new SQL snippet, insert a snippet, and hit run. Okay, awesome. So it's successful. Let's go to table editor. And we see a new table here, which is great. So it has a couple of fields here, ID, content, which will be text, some metadata, and the actual embedding vector. So this is all necessary right now for us to go and start inserting documents into this database. Okay, so right now, it's obviously we probably need to go and refresh our component here. Okay, so when we look up for data tables, we see documents, which is awesome. So any text we can pass here, we'll be able to create this embedding. So for embeddings, we also need to pick the model. So OpenAI is going to be the embedding of choice, same model as we're going to be using in retrieval. And for document, we're going to be using a data loader. Data loader will allow us to chunk the documents and load them into the data store. So there's an option here as a JSON, but we're going to be using actually ingesting some PDFs. So that's going to be binary format. And we're going to be ingesting PDFs, which was going to pick here. And for text splitters, we're going to use a custom one. So for text splitter, text splitter essentially is a way to chunk the document. And some of the strategies help you to create better, more optimized chunking for RAG, and with RAG, essentially this is what powers the Q&A module for us. So let's look into what the text splitters are available here. So I like to use the recursive one, so it's actually the ones being recommended. Chunk size could be 1,000, and maybe the overlap, let's put it 50. So that's all set up right now. Okay, so the only thing that's missing here is the actual document. So let's go and add connection to Google Drive and start feeding these documents into the Supabase vector store. In order to add the Google Drive here, let's go and add a Google Drive a module here, and we're going to be downloading the file from Google Drive. And as you can imagine, you need to set up credentials, which is not a surprise, but that's probably the most important thing in setting up any workflow and with any new tool. So we're going to go click create new credential. And what the type of credential here is auth2, which is recommended. So it gives us the auth redirect URL, which is great, but then it has those two client ID and client secrets, which are not very clear, but let's say we need to figure out what it is. So let's go open the docs and let's figure out, go into Google Drive credentials. And I think that's going to be auth to a single service, if I imagine this being the right. Okay, great. So what you need to do is you need to log in to your Google Cloud Console. If you have a Gmail account, that's going to be automatically, you'll have access to that. You're going to need to go create a new project. And then after that, let's go dive into what needs to be done directly in Google Console. So in Google Console, you can look for credentials. You're going to get into the credential section, and what we're going to be creating, and we're going to be adding a new auth client ID. So the application will be web. We're going to call it docbot. And we're going to also add authorized redirect URLs. Remember that URL that NNN was telling us to use. So we're going to use exactly that, going back to the redirect URL. Okay, adding that. And let's hit create. So what it's going to give us, that's going to give us a client ID, which we're going to go and paste into NNN, and then we're going to paste the client secret, and let's hit save. Okay, that's great. So right now it shows me sign in with Google, which is basically the auth2 flow that I need to go through in order to connect those tools together. So I'm going to hit sign in, and you're probably not going to see that screen, but I'm going to be allowing access to logging into that application. One of the challenges that I've seen is that it does not allow me to log in because it does not recognize my account. And one of the things that you need to make sure here in the credentials is that you need to, if you look into the consent screen here, you may need to make sure you add the users that need to be able to log in as test users. So I'm going to add the user that I'm logged in as a test user. Okay, so the user added, and let's go back to NNN and try to sign in again. When logging in with Google, you probably will see some notification about Google hasn't verified this app, but just click continue. Okay, so the connection is successful right now, so we should be able to have access to Google Drive. And then before we decide what do we want to do with Google Drive, let's go look into the Google Drive. So I created a comprehensive HR policy generated with LLM, just a sample document, but it kind of represents what the real company HR policy is going to look like. And we're going to grab the URL for this document, and we're going to go back to NNN, and let's download this document. So we're going to be downloading by URL, and I'm going to paste this URL here, and let's execute that step. Okay, so we have our document here, which is great, and we're going to try to connect this all together to our Supabase vector store. Let's see if it works. Okay, awesome. So that generated 36 items. What it means is that those items are essentially chunks, and those chunks would be input into the vector store with embeddings alongside. So let's go back to Supabase and let's look into what's happening here. So we see exactly 36 records here. All of them have the content, metadata, but also embeddings. And I think we're going to be ready to activate these embeddings and make use of them. And let's go back to our AI agent. So AI agent already has a tool that will help us to answer questions with vector store, and already connected to the vector store. Let's make sure we are looking into the right table here. Document, that's awesome. Okay, has the same embedding model connected. So that should probably do the job. And let's try to test it out. So let's go and execute workflow. Let's go to Slack and let's post it here. And let's go back to NNN. Okay, something went wrong. And the problem here is there's a chat input. So this is a default configuration for the AI agent. And one thing you need to do is you need to change the source of promise defined below. And as you can see here, this is actually the incoming block here. And we're going to drag and drop the text value. That's going to insert the actual text that's coming from Slack. And let's go back and start again. I'm going to post the same question here. Okay, so that's already hitting Supabase vector store, which is awesome. Does a couple of loops, and there's one item at the end. So the item is, I could not find any specific information about floating holiday weekend. Okay, so that's probably good, but let's find another question also to test it out. I also want to get the results directly in Slack. So maybe we can connect this to an additional send message here. And because we have a static message here as a result, so let's connect them all together. And we're going to grab the output here. Instead of saying hello, we're going to be outputting exactly what the model returned. And another thing I want to do is I want to, instead of replying in the channel, I want to reply in thread. And for the message ID, it requires me to put a timestamp on a message ID. If you go to Slack trigger, you would find this field called TS, which is a timestamp. And that would be essentially the ID of the message. And we should be good. And I'm going to go grab another testing query for our Slack bot. All right, let's execute that. Let's go back to the Slack and channel, and then let's ask another question. Okay, so going back, we see there's a lot of magic happening, and we should see a new answer. Okay, awesome. So it sounds like the company is offering 401k contributions. That is coming directly from the database. So as you can see, this is a super simple setup. We haven't even configured anything on a system prompt level. We have not even told which tools are available. So the whole agentic system here was able to figure it out on your own. As you can see, we've been able to create a fairly simple agent fairly quickly. And most of the time we spent signing up and creating accounts and setting up credentials. But in the future videos, we're going to be talking more about how to build more sophisticated agents and swarms of agents that can act as one entry point for anything in Slack. And we're going to be adding more functionality, and we're going to be explaining how those architectures could evolve in the future. So please let me know if you have any thoughts or ideas in comments, and please subscribe. Thank you.